Welcome to All in the Words, the podcast for writers and storymakers in all their forms. Each episode we explore a different corner of the writing world, from stage to screen, audio to novels, lyrics to script. With original pieces, creative conversations, and toolkits for your process. Lee here, and in this episode we hear about Marjory, who featured as one of the monologues that was written for Codswallop CIC's Tales Told Festival in 2018. All to come in this episode of All in the Words. If you're a regular listener to the podcast, you'll have heard episodes talking about community arts company Codswallop CIC and their Tales Told Festival. In 2018, they were unpacking the rich industrial heritage of the town of Guiseley, and they asked me to write some monologues which were performed at that year's festival. We interviewed a number of older people who recounted their experiences from working in the various mills around the town. However, we did cheat. We spoke to Marjory and Alan, who'd relocated to Guiseley many years earlier, but were originally from West Bromwich, and they met while working at the Archibald Kenrick Iron-foundry, a business that started by making buckles, but with the arrival of shoelaces moved into the iron-foundry business and established a site in 1791 which still exists today. And, although Marjory and Alan were working in a factory many hundreds of miles away, the social responsibility of the founders was the same as the mill owners in Guiseley, with the provision of housing and green spaces. In this monologue, we hear from Marjory, and just like those that worked in the mills, there was the belief that the new health and safety rules were a hindrance rather than something that was introduced for their protection. The monologue you're about to hear is performed by Chloe Lawson. So let's hear what Marjory has to say.
You never know what life's gonna throw at you, do you? I mean, when I were a lass, you never had any expectations. You didn't in those days. You did what everyone else did. You left school and got a job, and it were in factory or mill, and that were it. You got married and had some kids, and then it were back to work. When I started, the place you worked pretty much laid out your life for you. Don't get me wrong, there were changes. I worked at one place, and then they moved me around from one department to another. I also had friends who would move round from factory to factory. But it was pretty much the same, wherever they went. But I hadn't banked on meeting the boy I were going to marry when I started. This young lad, apprentice, he'd come through every day, whatever department I was in. Key cutting, enamels. He seemed to follow me. He were right cheeky and all. I think it were that what won me over. And his smile. Anyways, I told our Stan, he's me cousin. I think he must have said something, 'cause it wasn't long before Alan summoned up the courage to ask me out. I'll never forget it. There was this park, see? It were provided for us by factory, and we'd go there at weekends in the summer to sit out in the sun. Them lads were hilarious. They were like peacocks strutting up and down, trying to outdo each other and catch the eyes of us girls. Alan wasn't like that. That's what made him stand out. That, and his smile, and his cheeky sense of humour. So, he plucked up the courage to ask me out. I didn't want to make it too easy for him, so I kept him guessing for a bit. Then I said yeah, and he took me to the picture house. 7 brides for 7 brothers. Trouble was, it wasn't for a few years till I ever saw the end of it. We had to leave before it finished so I could get me bus. Can you believe it? In fact, when I think back, there must have been half a dozen films I never saw the end of 'cause I had to get off. Oh, and Alan, he were a right gent. he always saw me home. I didn't learn till much later that me cousin always went along to see the film as well. With his girl. He were keeping an eye on me. Well, Alan, make sure he behaved himself, that he treated me proper like. He must have been all right, 'cause just about a year later we got engaged. And then another year later we were married. We had a right send-off from the lads and lasses at the factory. It were like having a huge family. They were great. Still in touch with some of them now. We have lost a few along the way, though. I stayed at the factory for years after. It were great. Hard work, but we knew how to have a good time. I left to have our kids, but when they were at school I were able to go back. Thing was, it changed as years passed. It were all this health and safety. When they started bringing that in, all the fun went. It got stricter and stricter. Felt like they were watching us all the time, the gaffers. So, time came for me to move on. Alan stayed a bit longer, but then even he got a job in another factory. That lasted him till he retired, but they've all long gone now. Closed down, turned into houses or supermarkets. I don't like to think about it. I remember watching, knocking walls down, and as they fell, I got goosebumps. I could feel the memories of all those people, all those lives of those who'd passed through them gates, going back hundreds of years, all gone, just like that. But I still have lots to be thankful for, 'cause if it weren't for that place, I'd have never have met my Al.
If you'd like to find out more about the amazing work that Codswallop do, then head over to their website, codswallop.org.uk, or follow them on Instagram and Facebook. Just search for Codswallop CIC. Thanks for joining me on this episode of All in the Words. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, rate and share, and join the conversation over on the All in the Words Instagram profile. You can find any links and episode extras on the podcast website, allinthewords.podbean.com. Until next time, keep writing, because it's not just craft, it's all in the words.